Hi, I'm Jennifer Fountain with GrowingUpTriplets.com, and I thought it would be fun to give you a peek at my tiny little kitchen and see how I am able to prepare real food in a very small amount of space. A few months ago, my family and I moved from Florida to Tennessee, and we downsized. Our kitchen is probably about half the size that it used to be. There's 5 of us in our family. We have 3-year-old triplets, and then my husband and myself. And we first moved in and I thought there's no way I can keep up the same lifestyle, doing the same things I've been doing, fermenting and dehydrating and all the different things in this tiny little space. But as the weeks and months have gone by, I've found that I actually have been able to do that. I've had to be very creative with the space that I have. So let me go ahead and give you a tour. This is my fridge. And it doesn't seem like anything special except that it's several inches shorter than my previous fridge. So it's not quite a standard size fridge, which may not sound like it would have a huge impact, but it actually does. Such as the milk that we get from our co-op, our raw milk, comes in containers that are too tall, so I actually have to transfer those containers, the milk in those containers, to shorter containers, which requires extra washing and extra dishes and all that kind of stuff. And it makes the food and the available space for 5 people a whole lot less. We actually have a freezer in our garage / guest room. We've converted it to a guest room. And so that makes this tiny little itty bitty side freezer not really a concern. We've actually been able to utilize the freezer in our guest room, and that actually makes the space a whole lot bigger for us. So I highly recommend a deep freezer if you can. So if you walk in to the kitchen, you will see that I can easily span the width of the kitchen without even trying. It's very, very small and really only big enough for 1 person, maybe 2. But over here is where I have my standard sit on the counter coffee pot. It's very important. I highly, highly recommend having your coffee every morning. And you can see I've got some sourdough fermenting on the countertop. And if you move around, you'll see that I actually have most of my appliances on the counter. And that's because my cabinet space is actually quite limited. These cabinets are actually very, very shallow. They really don't hold very much at all. So the majority of my pots and pans and my appliances that I use on a regular basis are out at all times on my kitchen counters. And then over here we have our produce, which actually typically extends and covers and fills up, but we obviously need to go grocery shopping right now. But for the most part, what I've done is I've tried to get creative, and that has meant shifting things around as I've learned where I like to keep things and where things need to go. You can see I've got some canned products up on top of the cabinets, which typically would not be my preference, but in a small space with a small pantry and a small house and a fairly large family, it has to go somewhere. So you can see my stock pot stays out, and I cook all my broths in there, and typically if I'm making soups or chili or anything of that type, I try to at least triple the recipe so that I have enough for leftovers dinner, and then I have enough to put in the freezer. So it actually minimizes my time in the kitchen, so I'm cooking 3 meals at once. Next, I'm going to show you my dining room area, which actually also doubles as a food prep station. This table I have typically set up, and for the majority of the past 4 or 5 months, I've had a dehydrator sitting on top of it, and I've gone from the kitchen to the table to this table with a dehydrator on it, dehydrating and preserving the fruits of the harvest and all the fruits and the nuts and the meats and things that we've been able to get through our local co-op. And right now I don't have the dehydrator set up because I'm taking a break from that, but it actually worked out really well, as long as I informed the children not to get into that. but I was able to have several different prepping stations. I thought it might actually be a little challenging, but it turned out to be helpful because it kept the dehydrator that ran for anywhere from 3 to 24 hours out of the actual kitchen area. It took it off of my counter space because it's big. If you're not familiar with dehydrators, they're square, big things. It was a 5-tray. And I was able to let it run, sometimes day after day after day, with different foods in it in here. And as you can see, it's not a huge dining room, but we were able to actually fit the table for the 5 of us and this small little card table in here. So that ended up working out really well. So as we come back around into the kitchen, you can see I have had to get creative with storing some of my pantry items. I've got some grain sitting on top of the refrigerator, which is not preferable, and it's certainly not pretty, but in a pinch, it works. And then you can see in my pantry, you can see how it is chock full. We've got every available space, it seems like, and actually needs to be redone and reorganized. But on the bottom, I've got some beans and dried goods and some more grains down there that I've got stored. And I'm able to, in this very small kitchen, I'm able to soak beans, I'm able to soak nuts and dehydrate them. I'm able to dehydrate fruits. I've been able to dehydrate apples, and I regularly make yogurt in the dehydrator and on the counter. And I make my sourdough and all these different types of foods I'm able to keep going for my family. And we're able to eat real food in a tiny kitchen. Thanks for joining me on the tour of my tiny kitchen. I'm Jennifer with GrowingUpTriplets.com.